Oh, no.
Over 90 of the top 100 U.S. accounting firms trust Bill to handle bill pay processes. Why? Because our tools are built on over $1 trillion of secure payments. We're not just moving money. We're powering financial workflows for 500,000 customers. That's a level of expertise you just can't fake. Ready to talk with an expert? Visit Bill.com/proven to get started and grab a $250 gift card as a thank you. Terms and conditions apply. See offer page for details.
The Quilt.
Living memories of queer Britain and Northern Ireland. With me, Tash Walker.
And me, Adam Smith.
Hello, Adam.
Hello, Tash. You know what? Despite all the work that we've done together, Tash, I reckon there's loads of stories we haven't captured.
There's got to be, from all the different places.
Yeah. And now is the time, because queer people, more than ever, are recognising the power of their experiences and their memory.
I want to hear them, Adam.
Yes.
You know what, Adam?
What?
We've got to do it. We've got to travel around the UK.
Yes.
Let's get gathering the stories, the histories, the herstories.
Their stories. Okay, I'm ready.
Let's go.
This is an audio archive for the future. Tash, we're going to Scotland in this episode.
Great.
Yes, and I've called the episode The Missing.
Are we making a true crime podcast, Adam?
We are, finally.
Finally.
Well, that's the thing about queer history. It's often a mystery, isn't it? And sometimes it can be a whodunit, like who put the shame inside you.
I mean, I know who put the shame inside me, but who put the shame inside you, honey?
Different podcast. And I just heard quite a lot of stories from LGBTQ plus folks in Scotland about people and places and lives that had disappeared. Sometimes historical things, sometimes even our own memories.
Okay, so is the missing a theme in Scottish history generally then?
Well, I'm thinking of the Highland clearances of the 18th century and the 19th century, these large-scale forced evictions of people from their ancestral lands.
But I don't know anything about this. What happened?
Yeah, people got moved off. They went to North America, they went to Australia, and it hollowed out the glens and the communities in the Highlands, which is one of the reasons why Gaelic started to die as a language.
Right, okay.
And then there's also the disappearance of Scottish sovereignty, I guess, like in 1707 when Scotland became part of the UK.
Yeah, okay, right. Got that. Lots of history there. But tell me, what about LGBTQ plus life?
Yeah, okay. So I just think that we're often left with a sense that something is missing in our own personal stories, you know, like the queer person that you weren't able to be in your youth, or your gay ancestor in your family that you didn't even know that you had.
Yeah, okay, fair.
So how about this? Let's try something. Maybe we can dream up all these missing queer histories if I take you to Scotland.
Okay, Adam. I'm trying. A new chorus of ghostly queer voices and stories.
Exactly. And first, it's a story from a person called Mel.
A few years ago, I went on a very rainy day on a road trip with my sister and one of my best friends, Lottie, to a place called Inchmahome Priory, which is found on the only lake in Scotland, because obviously we have lochs here, but this is the Lake of Menteith, so is technically speaking the only lake to be found in Scotland. And at the centre of that lake is this ruined island priory. You have to get a tiny little speedboat to get there, and I believe it's like National Trust for Scotland or whoever runs it. So you get on this little boat, and we went, it was pouring with rain. I think we were the only people pretty much that had come to visit the island, and it's a very small island. You can walk across it in kind of a couple of minutes, maybe. And the priory is the only thing there, as well as the gift shop. And you can see the ruins of the priory. So there's the walls, there's like one room that still has a roof, and then the kind of arch of what would have been the windows. I kind of found myself thinking because it was a priory, that meant that a monastic community lived there. So there would have been a group of men living there on this very isolated island. So I can remember really vividly walking around the island in the rain, and there was a real sense of absence because, you know, when you go into that space now, it's very empty. You're walking around ruins and there's a real sense of something missing. And for me, that was very clearly the community that would have lived there. And I think because we were there by ourselves, you know, there weren't other people walking around to kind of take you out of that moment. It felt really apparent, the kind of ghosts of the people that would have been there, the lives that they would have led, the things that would have been important to them, which obviously would have been spirituality and religion, but I think also would have been the relationships that they had with each other as well. So it seemed to make sense to me that there would have been people who lived there who would have had kind of similar experiences, even if they didn't have the language that we have now to name themselves. So I couldn't find out too much about that specific community, but what I did find was that they were Benedictine monks and they followed the rule of St. Augustine. So then I looked into St. Augustine and I found that in his writings, he had explored experiences that he had before he kind of committed to a religious life. And that included describing a very romantic, to me, sounding attraction to men and women. So that for me kind of solidified this idea that was forming in my mind that there must have been people in these kind of same-sex environments living in quite close quarters, having very intense religious and spiritual relationships, which kind of gave me the sense, the feeling that there was very definitively queer history to be found here.
Dreaming up that queer history, sensing it. Who is Mel, Adam?
Oh, she's a writer and an activist based in Glasgow, and she runs the Bi History Project, which celebrates and preserves and improves access to bisexual plus history.
Okay.
In fact, she collected an archive pertaining to that, and it's now all in the Bishopsgate Institute. And she just does like loads of workshops and trainings with different organisations all about bisexual plus history.
Okay, amazing. Well, like Mel was saying, I think it's really important to not put labels on people historically with words that they didn't have or wouldn't have claimed for themselves.
Yeah.
You know, today, we are different people to the people who existed then in those times of the monks, which would have been in the 13th, 14th century. But what we can do, which is what Mel is doing here, is look back with that interest and intrigue at what is and isn't being said or what hasn't been said to uncover the histories which maybe might feel connected to our experiences today.
Yeah, and like think about whether these people were queer and bi, which are the words that we would use today, and also when to use the word bisexual plus.
If you're talking about a bisexual plus experience that could be recognised by someone who's pansexual or has sexual fluidity, it kind of just encompasses all those experiences in an abbreviated shorthand. So generally speaking, I only use that when I'm either talking about historical people, historical communities, or if I'm talking about community groups or the kind of broad experience that bisexual plus people may have as a group rather than individual people. So someone who is married to a man, so a woman who's married to a man who then expresses desire for another woman or someone of another gender, that absolutely makes sense to identify that as bisexual plus history. But that kind of requires a bit of detective work. And because bisexuality is kind of liminal, then that is harder for people to understand. And that leads to erasure in the modern day. And it also leads to erasure, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And unfortunately, often it is intentional, of people in the historical record as well.
Okay, Tash, weird question, but fun.
Hit me.
I wonder, how would we like future generations to define us and label us?
Big question, Adam. Wait, so one day we will be the queer ancestors?
Hold your horses. I'm not yet 40, nearly. I just think it's important when talking about people from the past, you know, even personally, like someone who was maybe quote unquote straight for years and then they came out as LGBTQ plus later.
Yeah, fair. I do actually really agree with that. But I think labels are also important for some things, like me finding the beer that I like, or trying to find a queer space.
Yeah, queer spaces, especially the ones that go missing. This takes us to our next segment in Scotland, Tash. It's a tour of the missing lesbian bars of Glasgow.
Let's go!
Yes, and it's with a woman called Natalie. And, well, first off, you've just got to hear how stylish she is.
I'm about 5'7", 5'6". I like to think I'm brunette, but apparently I have grey hair. I have sort of salt pepper, mainly salt-coloured hair, usually in a bit of a quiff, cut very short, slightly long at the moment. I dress always in jeans and some kind of boot or trainer. I have a Harrington jacket on, a denim shirt. I am white, and I have a little dyke pin badge, which was I bought from the Emily Withen studio on Etsy.
Talk to me about the badge.
It was like a portal back in time, like a tiny portal. Because even though it's new, it's a way that Natalie connects with herself. Like when she was a baby dyke and when she was going out in Glasgow in the early 90s and getting involved with a queer arts festival, actually, called... Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, I'm always ready.
It was called Glasgow.
I love that.
It's so 90s. Did you wear badges in the 90s?
Oh yeah, I've been wearing badges since I was a teenager. For your listeners, I don't wear a lot of badges. I haven't got a jacket that's got covered in badges. I'm not one of those people. I have one badge. It's very singular, it's very curated, it's very discreet, and it's one at a time.
And this one is a black circle with the white word in all caps.
Dyke.
We're walking through centre of Glasgow and it's absolutely thriving. There's just people everywhere.
Yes.
All sorts of different people. Everyone's out on the streets. Everything's open. Where are you taking me first on our tour, Natalie?
I think we're going to go first down to St Enoch and to where the old GLC Centre, or the GLC, used to be.
Okay. What's GLC?
The Gay and Lesbian Centre.
Okay. And how did the Gay and Lesbian Centre come about in Glasgow? Do you remember?
From what I know, I think it was a group of people. There was a committee, and they lobbied to have a dedicated Gay and Lesbian Centre in the city. And from my point of view, they used to hold a lot of ceilidhs to fundraise for it, which used to be in the People's Palace.
Wow.
So I moved to Glasgow in 1987 to go to university. So I was a student here with my undergraduate degree. I wasn't out at that point. So I came out just sort of towards the end of university, so at the end of that time, so that would have been 91. And then I was really aware at that point, so from about 92, 93, of these ceilidhs that would happen in the People's Palace. It's like a bit of an event, and people would dress up. The men would put their kilts on and, dance together and all, it was great because it was that blend of a very queer or gay culture mixing with very sort of traditional Scottish culture of the ceilidh. And it was beautiful.
Can we see the building yet?
Yeah, it was this one here.
It's this one that's got a big Premier Inn sign on the side.
You would just go around the corner and then I'll show you where the entrance was.
Okay. So yeah, it's a really, really big, blocky building, this one. Yeah.
So
Really kind of corporate looking. sort of some, I don't know, cute design furniture in a cafe in the lobby with these big glass windows.
And probably some office space somewhere. But yes, it's very bland, isn't it?
So what do you remember of the actual space that was the Gay and Lesbian Centre when you went in?
Yeah, well, you went in and it was a kind of like, there would be a little lobby area, probably with a notice board naturally, and you'd go in a bit further, deeper into the building, and at the back there was a cafe. So it was quite a basic cafe. We'd do sort of sandwiches, baked potatoes, teas, coffees, and then you go up the stairs to the first floor, and there were certain meeting rooms, so different groups could sort of hire different spaces of different sizes to have their meetings or events and so forth. So, and I think that's what the ethos of the GLC was, just to have something a bit different for people to go to.
And as someone who was like new to working in the arts and trying to build a career in the arts, what did the centre provide you with?
I was doing a project for Glasgow in 1998, having done a similar project for previous Glasgows. This project in 98 was called Finger Licks, and it was a sort of participatory project, so a community project with different lesbian women to put together a show based on any anecdotes, their lives, stories that they wanted to bring to the stage. And then we spent a few weeks devising it. So I would come here, and the GLC, as part of our kind of funding or their help, their support, they gave us a space for free every week. And so I would meet the women in this space, and we would come to the GLC to do our rehearsals.
Great, so it incubated Finger Licks.
Incubated Finger Licks, which we then performed.
Gestated, maybe.
Yeah.
And how do you feel now that we're just standing outside what is really quite a bland building, and you wouldn't know that there was this Gay and Lesbian Centre here that incubated amazing queer art years ago? And people are screaming on the fairground ride that's just across the street.
Not screaming at me, unfortunately. I feel quite sad that there was so much hope and there was so much energy went into, founding the GLC, that I feel quite sad that it didn't last, and that the space has been given over to some commercial proposition rather than the council trying to build it into a community space.
Seagulls. So we're just now walking up to this really quite rough looking, but would have been originally quite a fine, nice old 3-storey stone building here in Glasgow, just in front of the river.
Just in front of the
river. And
river.
it's covered in graffiti now, and there's someone selling flags and tourist knickknacks outside the front.
Yes. We're at what was called the dressing room. And this was a bar that was a gay bar, but was kind of catering to much more of a sort of sedate scene. So it was all armchairs and rugs and sort of sitting down and having a quiet drink kind of vibe to it. Very open space.
And also these big windows that we can see on the street level now.
And that was, I think, in 89, 90, was really, really unique amongst the gay bars in Glasgow, which tended to either be in basements or on first floors. So their entrances, or where the clientele would go, was never at street level, apart from, say, the Waterloo, but then the windows at the Waterloo are covered up. So I remember coming in here with my flatmate at the time, who was a gay man, and just the sort of surprise of being able to go to a gay bar that was on street level and that you could see out was very special at that time. But obviously in 89 it made people quite nervous.
Were you nervous going in there?
I wasn't nervous going in there, partly because I didn't really identify as gay at that time.
Okay.
So for me, everything was just fun.
Okay.
Fun adventure. I just think it's really, really interesting that these corners have been allowed to sort of fall into disrepair. Bit of a triangle of nostalgia.
Does it feel nostalgic to you, walking around these old...
And it does feel quite nostalgic in that these were places that have this history that people did go to, but now don't. And now that history is obviously being... missing, it was erased, whatever the word is. So yeah, I do feel nostalgic that there was, that's the custom house. I do feel nostalgic of these places, because they're not pretty, these places. But they did have meaning, they do have meaning.
Yeah. Oh, I love that fact about the places having meaning. Like it's part of Natalie's personal queer history and the queer history texture of Glasgow.
Yeah, I relate to that so much. Like when I go back to the streets in Plymouth and Bristol, my queer haunts of the past, the structures may have gone or their faces have changed, but I still have all of my memories.
Yeah.
Like Natalie, I have that nostalgia.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to Natalie on the street.
So here we are at Clyde Halls, which I do believe it seems to be now completely closed up.
Well, it's got a big sign outside that says Euro Hostel, budget stay your way. So it's a youth hostel or some kind of, it's like accommodation, and then, but it's all boarded up with those like really intense metal boardings, and then there's like fly posters of concerts and stuff. And yeah, it's completely closed. And
I think it was...
and it even says, keep out alarmed property.
Yeah, and it was, I think, halls of residence for Strathclyde Uni back in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. So here is so round about 92, between 92, 90 to 94, this is where Lesbian Line would have their monthly disco. The Lesbian Line disco at Clyde Halls. So Clyde Halls, you're going down Clyde Halls tonight.
What's Lesbian Line?
So Lesbian Line were a group of volunteers that ran a helpline for the lesbian community in Glasgow, probably Greater Glasgow area. And they did sort of social activities as well. So they did some social groups during the week that you could go to, and then they had for a period of time had the monthly disco, which I think was really a way of fundraising for the Lesbian Line. And there would be, go in and it was like, then it was full of lesers, with the trestle tables situated around the edges of the room, the pub chairs and all of that, and someone spinning discs.
It sounds a bit like a school disco.
It was like a lesbian school disco. And I don't suppose I thought that I was going to meet the love of my life there. I just wanted to be part of something. And there were things happening in Edinburgh, but that just felt such a long way away. So, I'm grateful for the fact that it was a place I got to meet people and got to know myself a bit better.
I am loving this tour by Natalie.
Great.
Peeling back the streets of Glasgow to give us that insight into its queer past.
Yeah, and hers as well.
Yeah.
In fact, on the tour, as we were walking around, she told me about when she first started remembering these old spaces.
Back in 2021, so Scotland was just sort of coming out of what had been quite a draconian lockdown, series of lockdowns. And I was locked down and hadn't really been out, but in that time I was starting to think about making a piece of work. And I wanted it to be very much about lesbian identity and what was happening in terms of the perception of lesbian identity and how it was changing. And they sort of brought me to think about who was I as a young lesbian and the places I used to go and what has happened to them. So I wanted to revisit those spaces to see if they were still there and what they look like now, to almost maybe work as a metaphor or a symbol or some kind of image for a question around lesbian identity.
What was the metaphor that was drawing you to?
I think it was just like I was trying to think about erasure or the lesbian life that I had lived, missing from the topography of the city today, and obviously things change, and I wanted to basically find some way of documenting that. I didn't know what my answer was. I still don't.
So when you were drawn out in 2021 to take those pictures, and you were thinking about the visibility of lesbian spaces in that case, and lesbians and queer women in general, I guess, like where are you with that question?
Well, I think the question is really current at the moment, and I think back in 2020, 21, and I was questioning what is happening, because it just did feel like nobody wanted to be a lesbian. Everybody was either calling themselves queer or gay, but it was almost like no one could touch the word lesbian, and also is becoming associated with very sort of gender critical sort of ideas and ideology, and also sort of so denigrated in that respect, but also dismissed. And I heard so many stories back in 2020 of just people just being dismissed because, oh, you're just a lesbian. So I was really interested in what was happening between generations, of maybe people discarding the term or the word as an identity, and what that mean as someone who was getting older and wanting to stay current of how do I embrace what's happening in terms of identity politics. But I think now we're in 2024, so 23, 24 has seen a little bit of a sea change in all of that, where I think...
What's happened?
Younger lesbians... I think there's now more discussion about what does the term lesbian mean, and that it's not just cis women that are lesbians, but it's cis women, it's non-binary, it's gender non-conforming, it's trans women, can embrace the term. So it is becoming, I think there's more sense of it becoming an inclusive term. So, I kind of identify very much as lesbian first and then gender non-conforming. Non-binary doesn't work for me as a term. I find gender non-conforming just a very way that I kind of go, it's neither one thing nor t'other. It's like I just don't conform. But if lesbian was a gender, I would be that. I think it could be.
Yeah. What does the word dyke mean back in the 90s on our history tour of the bars, and what does it mean now?
Well, for me, I'm very fond of it as a word because obviously we know that it was always used as a term of abuse. You fucking dyke, etc. But I always liked the term that I was a baby dyke. And now I'm a grown-up dyke, and I sort of see it as a bit more of a sort of stomping. But I'm taking it again because back in 2020, I was walking home from the shops from the supermarket one day, and someone was behind me on their phone, and they said down the phone quite loudly, "Oh, I can't go any faster because there's some dyke in front of me going really slowly." And I was like, it's like going back to the term perf or fag. It's like, you don't have the authority to use that.
Yeah, that's my word.
That's my word. So I use this, I use the word to reclaim it and to take hold of it before some straight woman can say to her friend down the phone, there's some dyke going too slowly and making me feel small. Your immediate reaction is shame. I wasn't ashamed, but your immediate reaction is to not confront because you want to stay safe.
Yeah. Okay, where are we now?
So we're in George Square and we're walking up to Glasgow Queen Street Station.
The train station.
The train station.
With the big glassy front and a sort of gold-coloured
basically
roof.
Refurbished just before COVID and through COVID. So this is a spanking new station and facade.
Okay.
And this was, in the early 90s, mid-90s, the site of Sappho's, Glasgow's only lesbian bar that only survived for about a year or two.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, here it was.
But where?
Exactly where.
Oh.
So I'm going to take you into the station.
Okay, we're
actually.
going to go in. Yeah.
Because I think the entrance was probably there.
Oh, okay.
To some utility door.
Yeah, it's just to the left of one of the main entrances.
Down here. So
Hang on, this sign says toilets.
Toilets, left luggage, lost property.
Okay.
And
these people are wondering why we're coming into the toilet with a microphone.
I think it was probably where the toilets are, or where that emergency exit probably was.
And you've got to pay 50p to go through those barriers if you want to go and have
outrageous.
a wee. 50p a wee. Wait, so the toilets is where Sappho's lesbian bar was?
Yes, it was a sports bar which was under the old Queen Street station. So the doorway would have been...
Back out on the street now?
Yeah, so the
just
doorway
here.
would have been around here.
Okay.
And
it says danger of death, keep out now, because that must be where the electric supply comes to the station.
So, I mean, obviously it's all changed because the old facade isn't here, but you would go in and it would be go into a sports bar, and they obviously had a room to one other side, to the left-hand side of the sports bar, which they didn't know what to do with, so they called it Sappho's and made it into a lesbian bar. So to go to Sappho's, you had to walk through the sports bar, which had big screens with football on, and lots of guys watching football, to get to Sappho's.
How did it feel walking through that gauntlet?
I thought it was quite amusing myself. It wasn't a great bar, but someone was thinking about it, and I think that's to be celebrated.
Well, let's see. We're just going around the corner.
These streets, Virginia Street, Wilson Street, Ingram Street, have always been in the 90s, were a little enclave of gay venues. And I think still are, because Dulles and Polar Lounge are still there. Bennett's has now become AXM.
Oh, that's just around the corner, isn't it?
Just around the corner, yes. And I think there's a new gay bar called the Corset Club has just opened, which could be that place, the Corset Club. I think it's made cocktails and drinks.
Oh, wow.
And I've only seen it on social media. I've never been in here before, but it's an old corset factory, apparently, hence the Corset Club.
Should we go have a look?
Let's go and have a look, yeah.
Oh, and there's a vocalist on tonight as well, it says. Hey, there's a little stage, so they must have shows.
Same kind of music as the 90s.
It all comes round again. Well, of course, Tash, Natalie and I had a few beers at the end of the tour.
I mean, you absolute lads.
I know. We just talked for hours, actually.
Were you in the Corset Club?
Yeah. It's the new queer space in Glasgow. You know, the city's always evolving, changing. Queer life mutates.
It does. And also that nostalgia Natalie spoke about keeps us thinking about the places that are missing. But it's also great to hear that there are new places emerging for the nostalgia of the future.
Yes, exactly. Tash, when we first went to Glasgow, we heard the story about an organisation called Reach Out Highland. Do you remember?
Yes, I do, yeah.
And the person talking about it said that it offered essential support for trans people in the Highlands in the 1990s, but it wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
So obviously I had to find out more.
So it's another thing that's gone missing.
Yeah.
And organisations like that are often charities or supported by local governments where priorities change. And it's really hard to keep things going.
Yeah, and that's absolutely the case, as we're going to hear. So I got put in touch with a woman called Julia Gordon who had the full story. Julia is elderly and an interview would be a bit too much for her. So she shared her story of how she got involved in the centre, Reach Out Highland. She shared it as a text, and she did say that we could include it in the quilt.
That's so great. And also it's really important to collect people's stories in the ways that they can give them.
Yeah. So then I found a trans woman like Julia who could give voice to Julia's words of starting work with the charity. So that is who you're going to hear now. Carrie Marshall speaking the words of Julia Gordon.
It was someone I came across not long after I chose to live openly as a woman, so that would have been around 1993. She said to me, "I know someone who would like to meet you. If you're willing, I can set that up." Since she would part with no further information, my curiosity won the day. The person she wanted me to meet was Andrew Hunter, the manager of a sexual health charity called Reach Out Highland. NHS Highland and Highland Council provided funding for Reach Out Highland, whose remit was to offer support to any person who saw themselves as belonging to or identifying with a sexual minority group. Sexual minority groups were identified at that time as men who had sex with men and persons who identified as transgender, although transgender wasn't a term widely used then. So I met with Andrew, who wanted to know if, drawing on my own transgender experience and contacts, I could help with reaching out to those in the Highlands who were struggling below the radar with issues concerning their gender identity. I agreed to help set up a peer support group to create a safe space for transgender folk, which would be called the Highland T Group. The T would stand for transgender, a term I first heard voiced by an American girl who was volunteering with the charity when I initially joined them. It wasn't a term in general use in this country at the time. As attendance gradually increased, I began to collect articles and bits of information whenever and wherever I came across them, relevant to the transgender experience. This became the T resource, stored within Reach Out Highland, a library of sorts that folk could draw upon to help give some perspective to their situation. At that time, the internet was still just becoming a global commercial network. For some years prior to my meeting with Andrew in Reach Out Highland, I had been in the habit of travelling down to Edinburgh, usually once a month on a Saturday, in order to get clearer about my own gender confusion. I attended meetings of the Edinburgh TVTS group, which was an outreach project of the Beaumont Society that had been founded in London in 1966 to support folk like myself. With the T group up and running, I now made a point of getting myself along to the groups in Edinburgh and Aberdeen as often as I could, sharing whatever information had come my way. Reach Out Highland made it possible for me to keep abreast of healthcare developments in the management of gender identity, issues of sexual health and well-being, and to share all of that with others further afield. The Tartan Skirt, the Scottish magazine for the gender community, had started its life as a news sheet in Edinburgh in 1984, and it ran until 1991 when it ceased publication. Anne Forrester in Aberdeen took it up again in 1992 until her death in 1996. And so it came about that in 1998, with the support of Reach Out Highland and its back office facilities, I relaunched the magazine, this time with a greater emphasis on health and well-being, on equality issues, with signposts to places offering support and help of one kind or another, as well as the customary articles of general interest within its pages. In many ways, the tartan skirt was as close as some individuals could get to having a sense of a shared social life with other like-minded folk. Through the content of the magazine, I like to think they could perhaps see something they could value for and of themselves, creating connection of some level. Individuals with a visible transgender profile were few and far between in the community, and mostly down south. So I took every opportunity that presented to arrange for such individuals to be interviewed for the magazine at a distance. Ruth Stewart travelled to Blackpool and interviewed Yvonne Sinclair, who'd played such a pivotal role in establishing the London TV TS group in the 70s. Ruth also had the opportunity to interview Janet Scott, president of the Beaumont Society, when they met in 2000, and Martine Rose of Rose's Club and International Repartee magazine, when they met during the Harmony Weekend in Scarborough in 1999. I was also keen to invite submissions from non-trans significant others, such as the local consultant in Rigmore Hospital's Department of Genital Urinary Medicine, Dr. Gordon McKenna, who would guide those in Highland seeking medical interventions in support of their gender identity. Reach Out Highland's own Andrew Hunter and the organisation's counsellor Sue Pattison also made valued contributions. And a thank you to Susan Robertson for reporting on the lecture tour given by Dr. Tracy O'Keefe, well-known transgender author of Sex, Gender and Sexuality, in Glasgow's Western Infirmary in November 1999. An article, You and the Law, first appeared in the summer issue in 2000, submitted by Catherine, a serving police officer and member of the trans community. Catherine went on to contribute regularly to the magazine on matters of staying safe within the law. The spring 2000 issue of the magazine saw the appearance of a feature that would become a regular, Vicky's Web Watch. By now, the internet was an expanding source of information on gender identity. Vicky's reports would help guide us on our travels along that information superhighway. With the anonymity offered by the internet, the writing on the wall was there for anyone to see. Members of the transgender community would increasingly turn to a computer for information and connection. It offered a super safe space, even if that only comprised an exchange of pixels. In my hometown of Inverness, too, transformation had been taking place. The first Reach Out Highland Valentine Kalian Disco was held on February 12, 1999, in a large city hotel. Folk from LGBT communities all across Scotland joined in the event, though the local tea community was poorly represented, suggesting that it still wasn't easy to put one's head above the parapet in your own neighbourhood, for fear of being identified, ridiculed, dismissed from employment, attacked verbally or even physically assaulted. The tartan skirt remained a black and white photocopied item produced quarterly up until 2000, when the 44-page winter issue came out in glorious colour. Another change of manager and a change in direction for Reach Out Highland meant that the magazine was now being produced at home on my newly acquired A3 colour printer. And the entire project was attempting to stand on its own 2 feet, an undertaking that would ultimately prove unsuccessful, given the loss of support from Reach Out Highland. My own life was heading in another direction by this time, and I laid the magazine to rest with the autumn 2001 issue. Julia Gordon, June 2022.
The tartan skirt, what a great name.
Right.
And Vicky's Web Watch, so good. Fascinating to hear the beginnings of people using the internet, always, to understand more about themselves and also others like them.
And then writing about it in print,
Yeah,
right?
So good. Am I right in thinking that the tartan skirt has been digitised?
Yes, exactly. So there's this thing called the Digital Transgender Archive, and they've digitized the tartan skirt and other things, and they're just available online for free. So we can put a link in the notes for the episode.
Amazing. And it was also really great to hear Julia's words being brought to life through Carrie too.
Yeah, Carrie was great at performing those words for Julia. In fact, Carrie and I got talking in the studio afterwards, and she had this really powerful reflection on Julia's story.
Hi, I'm Carrie, and that was me reading Julia's words. And what really struck me about them was reading them as a trans woman who's come out in the internet age, where we have all this information available to us at our fingertips. And it struck me just how much strength and courage and dedication was involved in putting together publications like The Tartan Skirt, which were providing essential information to people who really, really needed it. And it makes me very, very grateful for the people who have come before us and put in all the work so that we can be who we are.
Next, we're going to the gym.
You never go to the gym.
How dare you? Okay, but fair.
You might hear me grunting after a while. I think that's 12. I lost counting. Okay, I also like doing free weights with for shoulder particularly, and sometimes for biceps as well. You know, I'm not exactly a kind of Adonis, but I've always felt that you need to make an effort out of sheer self-esteem. I do cable flies for the pecs because gay guys like pecs. They also like guns or biceps. Why? Am I pandering to homosexual norms? Well, yeah, maybe. But we all want to be desired, don't we? Guys never take me to be the age I am, which is 72. Younger guys in particular. Okay, if they ask me outright, I always tell them ultimately, but I usually say, well, what do you reckon? I've had 52, I've had 55, I've had 50s, not often 60s, and I've had my bus pass for quite a long time.
Wow. Who is this guy?
Well, he's called Rob Crawford, and he's extraordinary, Tash. He's a really kind, generous, smart man, always thinking. And, well, he's obsessed with guys with pecs.
Yep.
And anyway, Rob is someone who came out as gay much later in life than a lot of other people.
Okay, so his gay self was missing for all those years?
Yeah, you could say that. After the gym, I sat down with Rob at home and, well, we got right to it.
Oh, sexual thoughts, my goodness. I do remember at the age of 10 there being a new ITV, well, ITV was new when I was 10, programme on Saturdays called Holiday Town Parade. And it was usually, it probably was live, outside broadcast from various holiday camps like Pontins and Butlins and goodness knows where else, up and down the country. And they had the parade of the beauties in their swimsuits, a bit like Miss World, but, you know, Cleethorpes or Skegness, it maybe wasn't quite so exotic. And I think they probably had bonny babies and probably glamorous grannies and all that stuff. But they had a parade of muscle men. And I can remember age 10, looking back now, being fixated on the television pictures, attracted to muscular, fit men. And that remains the case.
I'm hooked, Adam. I want to hear more about Rob.
Yes. Well, he's got the whole story.
Okay, I was born in 1952 in Musselburgh, very much a Musselburgh boy. My parents were working class. My mother, for most of her life, was employed as a clerkess, a cashier, office staff, like that. My father had to leave school at the age of 13 to earn money for his family. He had 5 sisters and his income was important. I don't ever remember getting a hug from my dad. Really can't remember getting it from my mum. She may well have had postnatal depression when I was, just born. My sister was 2 at that time, and she was told by the family doctor to just pull yourself together, lassie. I went to Sunday school at a building I can see from my bedroom window, actually, from about the age of 5, 6, I don't recall when I went, right through to Bible class when I was maybe in in my early teens, 13, 14, because that's what you did. And everybody did that. And it was the basis of the society which prevailed in the 50s and 60s.
What kind of church was it?
Church of Scotland, a Presbyterian church, which is based on Calvinist teachings.
What was the teaching? Don't
get above your station in life, be modest, do well by people, be honest, be caring. I don't think caring featured in society in those days. Mm-hmm. You did what was expected of you and what was preached from the pulpit.
Okay.
I became interested in young people's meetings just outside Edinburgh, run by a doctor and his wife who were evangelicals, classic evangelicals. And I started going along to that, and at the age of 21, I gave my heart to Jesus, as the saying was in those days. I then found younger people in Edinburgh who were closer, in a Pentecostal church who I got to know and felt befriended by. And I enjoyed that time in my life because I'd found a certain amount of peace. I'd found people who accepted me, and I desperately needed to be accepted and loved. Who I presented to them was who they loved. I did, of course, not present my inclination towards men. Well, I was in that church. I was at university, and it was the summer before my final year, I met Hattie, my wife-to-be, was attracted to her for who she was, and she was attracted to me and couldn't quite believe that I fancied her. And I did. She was lovely. And she liked me. And so, long story short, the following year we got engaged and we were married a year to the day after our first date. She knew that I had had a fling with a guy in Russia over a period of 6 weeks because I was there as a company representative. The summer when I came back, having had the fling over a period of 6 weeks with this very attractive Russian guy, muscular of course, I fessed up to her the day that I got back. It was about June or July. We were due to be married and did get married on the 22nd of September. She consulted the elders, and the elders' only concern was, should we not put off the marriage? When I dabbled throughout my marriage, we had terrible arguments and sadnesses and all the rest of it. We had to tell our group leader. The church was basically a sect. It was very, very strict indeed. I was put under discipline. I had hands laid on me. I had demons cast out of me. I was told, you will do this. I did it because I wanted to save my marriage. I didn't ever conceptualise it in terms of being healed, but that was the narrative. It was conversion therapy by any other name.
Did you think it would work?
I wanted to retain my marriage, and it was based on acceptance and love. She wanted me as her husband. And of course, acceptance is a wonderfully powerful emotion. And I think implicitly I had not felt accepted for most of my life up to that point.
Why did you tell her about the flings with men that you'd had?
Why? Guilt. Simple as that. Guilt. And I did dabble over the years, and I was overcome with shame and guilt, like many men who are still married and who still need men. And I've met a lot in my time who are still married and they have never done what I've done, which is come out, in my case at the age of 66, because I couldn't live with being dishonest anymore. I hated myself for it, and I hated myself for most of my life for having that side of my character, which I knew let her down, I knew hurt her, But it was me, and it took me a huge amount of strength and weeks and months of wounding arguments, shouting matches, for me to realise I just did have to come out. And it was painful. It was immensely painful. And it was very saddening. Still makes me sad. I'm glad to say that over the years after we divorced, she, I suspect, with a lot of counselling, well, she did have a lot of counselling. I suspect part of the change in her was that she accepted me for being me. I remember in one of the arguments we had, she screamed at me, "You're rejecting me." And one of those moments which you don't really know, you think, and certainly that you don't know, my immediate response, without even thinking about it, was, "I'm not rejecting you, I'm accepting me." And that was one of those moments where you think, yeah, wow, that is absolutely the case. And I needed to accept me because for most of my life I had suppressed me. For most of our many happy years married, I had suppressed me because I couldn't be who I needed to be. You know, why would I choose to go off with some man in a public toilet for instant gratification at the expense of the depth and the richness of a long-term relationship with a wonderful woman? Well, I suppose ultimately it says a lot for the strength of the sex drive. Simple as that. I spent my life loathing myself because I couldn't reconcile my desires to church teaching. And when I look back on it now, I think, what a fool you were. I needed to be loved. I needed somebody to want me. And that has always been an issue in my life. I've always felt a need to be accepted. I had a craving to be accepted. Still have, particularly when it comes to touch.
Listening to Rob, there is so much in every line and every word that he says. When he recounts telling Hattie, "I'm not rejecting you, I'm accepting me." When he talks about how he was suppressing himself. But it was the church and the world he was brought up in that was doing that. Rob not remembering being hugged by his parents, feeling a need for touch throughout his life. It's so human. It's so important, that need to be loved, that need to belong. I just think he's incredible.
Yeah. And now to be able to connect to himself and to be able to understand what he needs and then express that so that other people can hear him, it takes courage to do that.
Yeah, it really does.
Also, when I spent time with Rob, it was just a month or so after something terrible happened. He lost Hattie, his ex-wife.
Oh, no.
They had remained friends, but she passed away this summer. I'll let Rob tell the story.
Hattie and I were married for 40 years. We got married in September 1979, and we were formally divorced on the 5th of January 2020. She died as a result of catastrophic brain injuries following a routine hip replacement operation on the 15th of June 2024. She became comatose and was in ICU for 7 weeks. And then our son managed to get her home, and she died at home on the 15th of June. We had become friends. She, as I said earlier, had moved a long way, I suspect because of counselling. And she would come on the phone, for example, and say, "Oh, Sainsbury's has got gluten-free bread at a knockdown price. I have to be gluten-free. Do you want some? Or there's been another storm, so the birch tree in the garden has lost a lot of its twigs again. I know you've got a wood-burning stove. Would you like me to bring some as kindling? And they are, incidentally, wonderful kindling. She did that several times. And on the day I moved, she brought me a lasagna and a homemade lasagna, I must say, gluten-free. And she made me a gluten-free apple crumble. And that was a measure of her. That's who she was. She was generous to a T. It was a privilege to know her, as I say, as a friend who was generous. And it still pains me to know that I won't see her coming down the back garden and into the back door, where I would say, oh yes, whatever she brought me, just leave it there. And if it was winter, I'd put the stove on, thanks to her kindling. And she'd stay for 2.5 hours and would blether all that time. There was no animosity, no bitterness at all. It was, yeah, I've lost a friend. And I find I'm very upset by that stuff.
Oh God, that is heartbreaking to listen to. This person he'd shared his life with for so long.
Yeah, his lifelong friend.
And also hearing about how Hattie was eventually there for Rob through her own journey and that they had that friendship. But it makes me think about the impact that Rob obviously had on her too. She just cared for him so deeply.
Yeah. But the good thing is that Rob is now living as himself.
Yeah.
Loss always reminds us to live, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Rob is enjoying life in the gym, remember?
Yeah.
And driving around in his flashy sports car, which I got a ride in, and hanging out with his gay friends.
I think many Scots guys are very quick-witted, and I'm quick-witted too, and I enjoy just the banter. I suppose that was a vocabulary in social terms I didn't have because I was a loner at school. I couldn't accept my sexuality. I didn't really know what it was. I struggled just having friends, and having come out, I've now got friends who I can rely on. I can have a banter with. I have a lot of good times with. Platonic in most cases. Most of my friends are ones that, I've had sex with, but I don't anymore because it's gone beyond that.
Listening to Rob talk about his friends just brings a big smile to my face.
Yeah.
He's so clearly himself now. Also, I just love that you spoke to him in his gym.
Yeah. And I think he's really enjoying life, as well as reflecting on everything that he's been through.
Yeah, sure. Are you going to get a gym membership now?
No. And there is a final point from my trip to Scotland that I want to share. Actually, it's from Carrie, who voiced Julia Gordon's words about Reach Out Highland. I asked her about what queer people across generations can learn from each other.
One thing I think we're missing is a connection between current generations and the generations that came before us, so that we can better understand the struggles that people went through and some of the battles that they had to fight that in many cases we seem to be fighting again.
Lovely words from Carrie.
And another few patches for our quilt.
Yeah, and next episode, we're going to the northeast, Adam, a place you know very well.
Aye, that sounds champion. The Quilt is an Aunt Nell production in partnership with Queer Britain, the UK's first and only LGBTQ+ museum, and funded by Mindsets and Missions.
It is hosted and produced by Tash Walker and Adam Smith.
Music by Rhiannon Takell. The assistant producer was Marnie Woodmead.
The associate producers for Queer Britain were Sue Shave, Sian Williams and Catherine Dick. Mixed and mastered by David Pye.
For this episode, we'd like to thank Mel Reeve from the Bi History Project, Hannah Justad, Ellie Muniandy and colleagues at the National Library of Scotland in Glasgow, Dagny, Carrie Marshall and the staff at Musselburgh Sports Centre.
If you'd like to talk to anyone about any issues raised in this podcast, you can always get in contact with Switchboard, the LGBTQIA+ helpline, on switchboard.lgbt or by calling them on 0800 0119 100.
Over 90 of the top 100 U.S. accounting firms trust Bill to handle bill pay processes. Why? Because our tools are built on over $1 trillion of secure payments. We're not just moving money. We're powering financial workflows for 500,000 customers. That's a level of expertise you just can't fake. Ready to talk with an expert? Visit Bill.com/proven to get started and grab a $250 gift card as a thank you. Terms and conditions apply. See offer page for details.